I'm calling to order the school committee meeting of March 25th, 2019. It is 6 p.m. This meeting is being both audio and videotaped. Is anyone else audio or videotaping this meeting? Seeing and hearing none, can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, and justice for all.
And my superstition is to always have a good meeting by starting to my left for roll call.
Jake Brady, student rep.
Bill Fonseca.
Sarah Trulio.
Gregory Thompson.
Rich Ficero.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Elizabeth Marcian Boucher.
Pamela Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Kathy Saletti, Recording Secretary.
Moving to item number 2.1, approval of the March 11th, 2019 regular session meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the March 11th, 2019 regular session meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Unanimous, Ms. Saletti. Moving to number 3, committee and subcommittee communications. You're on, Mr. Brady.
Thank you. So last Friday at the high school we had another round of Spartan Block, and personally I went to Mr. McVetti's Spartan Block where we discussed the greatest artists, musical artists of each decade, and it was very insightful to see the differing opinions of my peers and how we all came to a consensus in the end of each decade. And overall at the high school there seems to be good.
Was Frank Sinatra in that discussion at all?
No.
No? Just asking.
But overall, there's a really good vibe around Spartan Block, and I feel like students are truly enjoying it and getting the opportunity to explore what they haven't had the opportunity to explore before. And then last Wednesday evening, the middle school and high school bands performed in the high school auditorium, and I've heard some good things about it. It was a great concert from what I've heard. And then today at the high school, the middle school orchestra and chorus came to the high school to practice for their concert, which will take place on Wednesday at 7 in the auditorium. So it's going to be a joint, the chorus and the orchestra from the middle school, and then various groups from the high school all performing together. So again, that's Wednesday at 7 in the high school auditorium. And then finally, senior banquet preparations are well underway. This year, seniors will be offered a 4-course meal instead of the traditional buffet style that has previously been offered at the senior banquet. And this event will be taking place Friday, the 5th of April at 6 p.m. at the Delaney House of Belief.
Very nice.
Mr. Brady, always positive and detailed. Thank you, my good friend. Mr. Fonseca.
Okay, I attended the Youth Safety Committee presentation on vaping and the dangers of it on Thursday, March 14th. Very well attended, very informative evening. I also attended the Maple Shade Mountain View Art Show and Band Concert, which was held last Monday.
And orchestra.
And orchestra, I was going to get to that. The orchestra, the strings, the band, it was a phenomenal show put on by both Mountain View and Maple Shade. I also attended the day-long event put on by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education last Tuesday, and I mentioned it at our last meeting, Carios. The name of the program was Carios, Mapping Our Way Forward, and it was a good program. It was a day-long good program stressing a lot of the things that we currently do in our makerspace. Bringing out, challenging teachers to get creative and bringing out their best. It was a very good program. This Thursday, I'll be leaving for the National School Board Association National Conference in Philadelphia. And one more quick note is I am also on the parade committee, and our first meeting is this coming Wednesday, so get ready for that stuff.
Okay. Hey, Julio.
I don't have any this evening. No.
Mr. Thompson?
Nor do I, thank you.
And I just want to say that Mr. Fonseca and I met with the athletic subcommittee last week, and we'll be hearing from Mr. McGee on agenda item number 5. And Ms. Marcian Boucher?
Went to the concert with the high school band, the orchestra band, last week, and they're great. They always are. I miss the other things, but I'll try to maybe make one of those concerts. But it's much more relaxing when you can find a seat and you can really enjoy what they have to play. They're great kids. So.
Thank you. Okay, moving along to item number 4, opportunity for visitors to address the committee. Because I'm anticipating there's some people out there that may want to speak, I do want to define what we mean by opportunity to address the school committee. First, it's an opportunity to make statements. It's a strict 3-minute time limit to give everybody a chance to speak. The comments must be general, They cannot be in any way defamatory towards a person, school personnel, or a community member. And it's not a question and answer session. We listen, and at that point, we may confer with the superintendent at a later date on what was presented. So I look out there now and I ask, is there anybody there who wishes to address this as a school committee?
All right.
You have a seat.
if you like.
Sit down.
Take a deep breath and announce your name and your grade level.
My name is Jackson Steffen, I'm in grade 6.
Jack and Stephen, grade 6. Okay, go ahead, my friend.
Good evening. My name is Jackson Steffen. I am a student at Bertrand Park Middle School, and I am one of the representatives for the Amber team. In August, as you may know, we had a heat wave that made the upstairs rooms at school unbearable unless the rooms had air conditioning. In the Amber wing, students and teachers were sweating through their shirts, and some days our classes had to be moved to the rooms that were air conditioned, like the library and the second makerspace. Even though 2 of our classes were in air-conditioned rooms, our other 2 were not. In those rooms, the temperatures reached 97 degrees, and it was unbearable. Kids were going to the nurse complaining about headaches, nausea, and being overheated. While it's not fun to feel that way anytime, it's even worse to feel that way at school when you're supposed to concentrate and work hard. A Harvard study has shown that being too hot makes it harder to concentrate. In August, I promised my peers that I would work hard to get air conditioning. I started a fundraiser online where we have raised about $600 with many more donations waiting on the outcome of tonight. I've learned there's a lot more than just money that's needed for this project, and that's why I need your help. I am here tonight to ask the school committee to approve air conditioning units for the 7 upstairs classrooms in the Amber Wing at Bertrand Park, or for you to approve and add to the budget old school unit to air condition the rest of the school that is still not air conditioned. I've been told that both of these options are possible, as the school's electrical system can carry the individual units and the school is already equipped for the whole school unit. If this gets approved, I will help organize school-wide fundraisers to help pay off this financial burden. I understand that this is a process with many steps, but I'm hoping this will make a difference for future 6th graders, Lily Ross, and Spanish students and teachers in the future. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Steven.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Mr. Steven, what you're requesting is that air conditioning be more specific for us. You say 7 classrooms on the 2nd floor, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and I'm not sure about this, but I'm pretty sure there are a couple rooms in the in 7th grade that are not air conditioned.
And you've done your research and you feel that our electrical grid can handle those 7 units?
Yes.
Hey, just one more piece. We're already deep into our budget process, so this is something we may have to move to next year with our capital planning committee. But your comments are well said. If I could have a copy of that, if you could email that to me, I'd really appreciate it.
All right.
Okay. Anything else from Mr. Steven here?
I love that you did your research.
Yeah, well researched.
Good job.
Thank you.
I like the tie too, that's class. Thank you much, Mr. Steven. Anybody else, please? Ms. Kidrick? If you could please state your name and your address, please.
Keith McKittrick, 165 Hamden Road. I'm here tonight to address the importance of providing student athletes the opportunity to provide feedback about their experiences in athletic programs. While I do not believe that such feedback should be the only tool to evaluate the coach's performance, and I understand why some might be hesitant to allow it, I believe it can provide a necessary glimpse into what is going on a team from any sport. My daughter was a member of a varsity sport this winter. I am not simply here, though, to tell about my own personal story. Rather, I'm here to tell you that the school committee would be hard-pressed to find one girl from that team who would tell you that they had a good experience. In fact, if you were to talk to members of that team, you would learn that nearly all of them sought out the guidance office to try to alleviate the stress and anxiety caused by the situation. Some have spoken with administration, and a couple have had to seek professional counseling, my daughter being one of those. By allowing athletes to participate in exit surveys, you will be giving them a way to share their experiences, both good and bad. As a parent of a senior, I could have easily walked away, grateful that the entire episode was behind us. That would have been the easy way out. However, what kind of example would I be setting for my daughter? To take the easy way out, don't question authority, don't stand up for those yourself or those you love. I also think I would be doing a disservice to those student athletes and parents who are afraid to speak out fearing repercussions. The players in the programs are suffering. Please give these student athletes a chance to have their voices heard. Over and over I've been told that students must become college and career ready. If that is truly the goal, then they should be given the opportunity that they'll have in college and in their careers. And that is to provide feedback to those who supervise them and work with their education. So thank you for your time.
Mr. Makinchik, that is item 5.1.1 on our agenda.
Yeah.
And I thank you for keeping your comments general.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wishes to address the school committee at this time? Please state your name and your address, please.
Tim Bates, 47 Ridge Road. And I'm here to kind of echo Keith McKittrick's sentiments. My daughter was on the basketball team this varsity season, sports team, sorry. And while she did, enjoy the season because she loves the sport, there were some definite issues, that I think maybe some coaching evaluations could alleviate the situation. Not that I'm advocating, this is my 24th year of kids in school last year for us having kids in the school after 24 years, and it's been a great experience. But, and each of my kids played at least 2 varsity sports every year. Meg, my youngest that's here now, would have played 3 except for injuries, which were frequent, by the way, unfortunately. But I would say that the evaluations be not anonymous because that leads to people basically hammering coaches, without any feedback. But I would advocate that it wouldn't be a bad idea to, because our kids need to self-advocate, which unfortunately for my daughter, she is a very strong self-advocate, and it kind of led to a less than great experience because she did self-advocate frequently, asked that her parents not advocate for her or me with a coach. And, it kind of turned into a snowball that couldn't be melted, it just kept going. So, I'm just echoing Keith, I'm here in support, of that because my daughter's also a senior and I just would like to see it a different process because, I feel like the athletics do pretty well here and they're run well, but this was less than great experience for my daughter as well. So, I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see if there's any more speakers. Okay, seeing and hearing none. Presentation, Superintendent's Report. 5.1.1, proposal to conduct a pilot of the end of the season athletic feedback survey. And we have our ubiquitous Mr. Kevin McGee, our athletic director here. And you're in here for 3 agenda items, Mr. McGee?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's start with the first one, the proposal that you ran by the subcommittee last week.
So the student athlete feedback survey, it's all about improving the athletic department. Many of you know I'm finishing up my 3rd year as the athletic director at the high school, and based on input from parents, based on input from student athletes, based on conversations that Dr. Flanagan and I have had, I think one of the greatest ways we can improve the athletic department is to do a student athlete feedback survey. So I want to kind of let you know how I got to this point as far as the document. I did some research. I talked to local athletic directors at schools that are very similar to ours, such as Longmeadow, Minnechaug, Ludlow, Northampton. All of those schools do anonymous end-of-the-season student-athlete surveys. I looked at their surveys, and I talked to their athletic directors about how they implement them, and I took out all of the questions that they asked that I felt could really apply to East Longmeadow athletics. I also thought about the past 3 years, anytime that athletes brought concerns to me, anytime that parents brought concerns to me, and I tried to come up with a way to put those concerns on paper so that they have an opportunity to give that feedback at the end of the season. So I came up with 30 statements. Those 30 statements, the high school administration looked through and gave feedback on. The union president looked at and gave feedback on. Some experienced coaches in the building gave feedback on those questions, and we kind of adjusted the wording to those questions to come up with that final product of 30 statements. The way that we would implement it at the high school is I met with our IT specialist, Jeff Zilch, and he suggested going through Google Forms. So the way that I would propose implementing those 30 statements would be to schedule a sports team during the last week of their season. I would meet with them in the library. It would just be me. The coaches would not be there. As they come in, I'd check off their name from their roster. I would send them an invitation to their email, their school email. They'd click on the Google email and bring them right to the Google Forms. There would be 30 statements that they would click off on. as far as strongly disagree or strongly agree. And on those 30 statements, it would be completely anonymous, where they could feel free to be as honest about their answers as possible. And then I would use the results after the season was over and after the banquet was over. I'd go through a summary with the coaches of the results of that, and it would also be used as a tool to help guide me through the evaluation process with the coaches. I think it would bring some great insight from the student athletes, and if you look at the questions that we're asking, they all focus on about 5 different things: preseason communication, in-season communication, how coaches are dealing with practices, games, and then characteristics of a coach. So those are the 5 things that those questions would focus on, and that's pretty much what we came up with.
I have a lot of thoughts because I've had a chance to meet in the athletic subcommittee, but I'll leave it open to the other 4 members if they have any questions for Mr. McGee or Dr. Flanagan at this time. I'll hold my comments back.
Will there be a section where they can add additional information if they want? Because sometimes questions, even in their best intent, not that they lean one way or the other, but they might not be grasping or catching an exact concern. Could there be a spot where maybe they could write a concern in there?
So we did talk about having a comment section. I feel like the questions cover important aspects, and I feel like if we put in an opportunity for sentences of who knows what would be written, and it's anonymous, it could be a situation that
You could tell
would
who
be
it is.
difficult to, you could tell who it was, it could take away the, it being anonymous. It could also open up to serious accusations, and if there's a serious accusation against a coach, I would really prefer it to be documented and brought to the high school administration and to myself. So I feel like those serious concerns should be dealt with in a different way, but at the same time, there's some important questions in here that if coaches are not doing, that is a serious concern. I feel like if we have the comment section, it opens it up to a whole nother type of complaint.
You don't think it would make them, if they had a serious concern, one way of actually getting it out there? Because they'd feel,
Well-
I mean, I guess after you read the surveys, would you maybe get that feel and then you could talk to them as a group? Or what are you gonna do with the information after you've gotten it?
So as far as the information goes, I would review it with the coach, and it'll be a summary of the answers, and we look at things that the coach is doing well, things that the coach is not doing well, come up with a plan to improve those things. And if there's a pattern of a coach not communicating well, not caring for the student athletes, not preparing them for games, at East Long Meadow we post each job 1 year, and I can look at that, and that can be used as a tool to help with that decision as far as if we want to rehire that coach. It would not be the only indicator, but it would be very important information for me to get.
Beth, to your point, if I can interrupt for 1 minute, we did bring that concern to Kevin in our athletic subcommittee meeting. And if something happens during the season, remember, this is the end of the year. If something happens during the season, then that student athlete could go directly to either Kevin or Dr. Flanagan with the concern, as opposed to waiting to put a comment at the end of a survey when the
Well,
damage is already done, if you can understand what I'm saying.
Right, no, I would hope that if something's happening mid-year, it wouldn't be dragged on
Oh,
week
no,
after
no,
week
there
after
is
that,
that,
it would
there
be
is that
addressed
line of
immediately.
communication, right.
Yeah.
In the creation of the survey, were the DESI model surveys referenced at all for the educator evaluation? So students through the DESI site have an opportunity to provide feedback about their educators, just in terms of the creation of these questions, because they have a variety of survey types on there that students are used to accessing and being able to provide feedback through.
So I didn't use that. I used local schools and just
Okay.
thinking about the past 3 years and the
Okay.
common themes that have been brought to me from parents and student athletes.
It might help just looking at what DESI offers up as model feedback and thinking about a coach and an educator and the roles that they serve, being able to reference that in terms of how they pinpointed questions to get at educator effectiveness from the student perspective. It might help in terms of the creation of a athletic survey to look at if there's any parallels we can draw or any question types, or just to your point, like surveys can be very leading or misleading just by the nature of them. Just word choice even might help drill down the types of questions we might want to ask, or just rephrase them based on it.
So I suppose after the first year, you'll go over what they say, and if you think it needs, you'll fine tune it, right? Like if you're thinking something's not as effective, and
Correct, yeah, some questions could get misinterpreted, and that was a big reason why I had some coaches look at it, and I think, to your point, having student athletes look at it also, to even sit down with a focus group of 5 or 6 students and say, hey, when you read this, what are you thinking, and what,
Yeah.
not to necessarily evaluate their coach, but to see how they're interpreting the questions.
right? And so this is gonna be done like after the regular season, like what if they go into playoffs and stuff like that? It's after they're all done.
So my thought is that to get the student feedback during that last week of the regular season at all levels. So for example, the freshman baseball coach, the JV baseball coach, the varsity baseball coach, all of those would be separate times when groups come in, but none of the results would be shared with the coach until after the banquet or until the end of the season. That way, the athletes know that their season's completely over, nothing's gonna be shared with the coach until the season's completely over, and ideally after the banquet, because sometimes banquets are 2, 3, 4 weeks after the end of the season.
Now, does the end of the season in the spring season end sometimes after school ends, or is it always before,
Sometimes after graduation.
after graduation? You know, but to capture those kids, I guess, that are gonna graduate, you want their input, and when they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah.
So could you do them earlier?
So I would actually do the student athletes would do the surveys during their last week.
Okay.
So they would actually be coming in while the season's still going on, but nothing would be shared with the coach.
Good, okay.
And Kevin, you said you'll have all of the student athletes
Yes.
conduct the survey? You're gonna bring them all together at one time?
So it would be each team would get a block of about 15 minutes. So for example, freshman baseball is coming at 2, JV baseball comes at 2:15, varsity baseball at 2:30.
So
So,
they have to come, they have to do it, which is good. We want feedback from everybody.
yes.
And you'll share the evaluation tool with the coach prior to the season so they know what they're being evaluated on?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
You know, I have some discussion with this, Mr. McGee. So first, I'm glad it's a pilot. And you're saying this is gonna be part of the formal evaluation of the coach?
So I think it is very important for it to be connected to the formal evaluation of the coach.
Okay, so if I'm correct, and I'm glad this, the president of the association, that is coaches are a Unit A member. So, Mr. Gonzalez, if I can put you on the spot, are you prepared to negotiate this with the school committee?
Absolutely, we're always willing to talk to the school committee and be solution oriented.
Okay, so we would have to negotiate this with Unit A,
Negotiating a pilot would be
okay.
easier and quicker than putting something permanent in.
Okay. And there were a few questions on the survey, Mr. McGee, that I weren't sure about. I may just give you a personal call.
Sure. And I like the idea of getting a student athlete group together to review the questions, not to evaluate, but to just look at the
Yeah,
questions.
Right.
see if they
Input from
understand them
them.
even.
Well, it's gonna be subject to the MOI.
Yeah.
Subject to the...
Right.
It's a negotiation with the
Okay, so we want to do a motion subject to the MOI?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So I will move that we approve the proposed pilot of end-of-season athletic feedback survey, subject to Unit A negotiation.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Mashabachi. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? Unanimous, Mr. Saletti. So we'll get that moving, I guess, for the, by the end of the spring.
So one thought on that is to potentially start in the fall, because this wasn't voted on until after the spring season has started.
Okay,
So,
I see. Timing of it.
I mean, we can start in the spring.
What was your original intent?
Potentially, we had talked a little bit about starting it with a couple of sports teams in the spring and then all the sports teams in the fall. But I
Well,
can,
that's not a bad idea.
That's
because
good.
Phase
Yeah.
it in.
Yes, do
You can
that.
feather out good and bad questions that way too.
Right.
I mean, you could balance the different levels of the different gender sports, et cetera, yeah.
Okay,
Do that, okay. Thank you.
all right.
Um,
Pending successful
Also,
Good
pilot,
thing, yeah.
yes.
Negotiation,
Yeah.
yes. Mr. McGee, you are still on, my friend. 5.1.2, eighth grade waiver for boys volleyball. What's going on with that sport?
So boys volleyball, in your packet, it had 7 volleyball players signed up, but it's up to 10 boys volleyball players signed up. The MIA suggests if the number's below 12 per team, to apply for a waiver for 8th graders. So this waiver, we're still not sure if we're gonna have a varsity and a JV team, or just a varsity volleyball team. The interest from 8th graders, we're still kind of gauging, but we're hoping that maybe 5 8th graders or so would potentially play on the volleyball team. But right now, we're struggling to field the volleyball varsity team with 10 signed up.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Can I just ask a question?
Well, we're
Yeah.
gonna discuss it, okay.
Well, I'll move, okay, wait a minute. I'll move that we approve the 8th grade waiver for boys volleyball.
A second.
Second, okay, discussion. Mr. Thompson?
It seems like this is happening more often than it ever has. Are our general athletic numbers down in the high school? Percentage of student?
I would say they're actually up. As far as sports fee wise, we've always been above the past 3 years, the projected number of sports fees. But certain sports are having more participation, and it's hurting some of the less popular sports.
Which ones are having more then?
So boys track has about 50 participants. Baseball is in the 50 range. Tennis is up around 20, which is up from last year. And unfortunately, some of the volleyball players that played last year have switched sports.
Yeah.
When you say baseball's at 50, that would be trying out? Because that would be like,
That signed
teams.
up, there was approximately 50 that signed up
For all.
for all 3 levels.
for all 3 levels.
yeah.
Must be hefty ball players.
Yeah.
So I think certain sports, and we're still fielding teams, but I am always being cautious to the fact that I want to start looking at 8th grade waivers in case we get in a situation where we can't field a team.
Not that I want to discourage any participation, but at what point do we look at not fielding teams in certain sports anymore instead of, because I don't think the intent of high school athletics is to necessarily go to 8th grade all the time, occasionally, but as I said, it seems to be, so do we have too many offerings, and should we look at those offerings that aren't as popular and perhaps focus on those that are? Not tonight for an answer,
Sure.
but.
Yeah, I think boys volleyball lost a lot of seniors last year. Some players switched sports. I think it's going to come back up. Girls volleyball is a very popular sport. I would hate to lose the boys volleyball program. I feel like it's going to come back up.
Well, and I don't want to get too far off topic, but you mentioned to us about wrestling. If you want to give, because the numbers in wrestling are starting to come up. So it's just, it could be a cycle, because we talked about wrestling a couple of years ago, we granted a waiver and,
But how long have you been here, and how many waivers have you approved prior to the
well, no,
last
it's.
3 years?
Right,
It's been
you're-
3
you're-
years.
Yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
you're right. So.
Because I
we
don't
just-
remember doing many
No, we didn't.
eight,
Are
we never
10
did.
years ago, yeah.
Are there not tryouts in the other sports that are such high numbers? I mean, I.
So yeah,
'cause
the
I don't know
track
any of this
team,
works.
the track team doesn't cut anybody.
All right.
Baseball does have cuts. The lacrosse numbers are way up this year.
It's a popularity of the sports too.
Yeah,
Cycle,
Yeah.
but I think by not getting cut too, you feel comfortable going into, of course, volleyball was at this point, but maybe if in the past they had to, and the kids say, I'm gonna do track, because I'm not gonna get cut, which is good.
So your intention on this is on one team though at this point? Because you
At
said
this
12.
time, it looks like there's only going to be one varsity volleyball
Okay.
team.
Yep.
There is still the chance for more 9th and 12th graders to sign up. So if anybody's watching, they want to sign up. We had 3 sign up in the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
How does signups work? Do you just put it's signups and it just kind of sits there, or do they, does anybody go out there and start poking kids like, you look like you could play volleyball? I mean, do you ever try to recruit kids as they're walking by, like, you could play volleyball?
We
that
just
kind of
recently
thing?
had the wrestling coaches come in lunches and they were recruiting like crazy.
Were they really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Bad
And the
idea.
best
It's not a
recruiter
bad
is
idea.
the current athletes.
Athletes.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Talking
They're,
to each other.
they're the ones that are, I've talked to the volleyball team multiple times about, hey, keep talking to your friends, encourage them to come out to the
Right.
team.
We got buddies, it's good. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. McGee, if this is approved by the school committee, are you still able to get it through District F?
Yes, yes, so it's, in order to be proactive, this is the final step to allowing 8th graders.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Okay, seeing, hearing none. All those in favor of allowing this 8th grade waiver for boys volleyball in this spring season, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Unanimous again, Ms. Saletti. Mr. McGee, you're on a roll. Let's talk about softball.
So softball in your packets, it had 22 signed up for softball, and it's now at 25. This would be junior varsity only, so we're looking to make sure we have enough players for a JV team. We know we have enough for varsity. Again, the MIA is about 14 per team, and we're a little bit under that per team. And with April vacations, when people might go away, or injuries, we're trying to boost that number up to hopefully around 30.
So may I have a motion first for discussion purposes?
Move to approve the 8th grade waiver for JV softball.
Okay, discussion.
Second.
Oh, you have time for second, please?
Oh.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
second.
get a little ahead of myself.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just one pause. We work very well with Birchland Park Middle School administration as far as eligibility, travel, practices, etc.
Correct.
For all sports, we're all
Yes.
aware of.
And can I just ask the kids who are in 8th grade now that are in sports this past year, it's been going well?
Yes, ice hockey went really well. We had a couple of wrestlers, and we had a couple of skiers, so we had about 10.
All right.
So even though we're doing the waivers, there's not a ton of 8th graders coming up, but it's helping build the program and keep the numbers up.
Okay, thank
And
you.
those 8th graders in ice hockey especially were critical to having enough players. So that was really beneficial.
Okay.
And we would include the 8th graders' voices in the pilot survey as well?
Yes.
Even though they weren't enrolled in high school?
Yeah, we took a look at that.
Great.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the softball waiver for grade 8 spring season, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Unanimous again, Ms. Saletti. Thank you, Mr. McGee, very much. Thank you, Dr. Flanagan. Might as well stay the right there, Dr. Flanagan.
I know the drill.
So we got now moving to 5.1.4, high school program of studies for 2019-2020 school year.
I think we have Dr. Flanagan, Mr. Page, Mr. Marhefka, and I think our entire guidance department.
Nice.
So, Dr. Flanagan, before you begin, if I can just coordinate you through this presentation. I see 3 different presentations. First, the credit recovery proposal. Then we're going to move to the program of studies.
Okay.
And then the last proposal we have is a request to identify top students. So we want to do each one separately if possible.
Which would you like to start with?
Start with the credit recovery program, that's why it is in our packet.
Got it. I'm going to throw it up, something up on the screen for you. Do you see what I'm doing? Right here? Right there. Is it ELPS curriculum, Mr.
It's central
CO?
office.
Okay.
There it is. All right, there it is.
Okay. All right, thank you for meeting with us tonight. We have our entire guidance counseling staff here tonight because they are the ones that can speak, I think, to some of the details that you might have tonight. One of the things that we've been dealing with for the past few years at the high school is credit recovery. And so tonight's goal is to get you acclimated as to what credit recovery looks like, what are the advantages of it, and how it's serving the needs of our students. One of the things that we're pushing more and more is in support of the ELPS goal of supporting the whole child, is meeting students where they're at. And we feel that the credit recovery program is doing exactly that. It has been getting a lot of, high schools across the country are utilizing credit recovery. We did a lot of research because we wanted to make sure that it fit our needs, but also is in line with what other schools are doing as well. So I'm going to first turn it over, just to give you an idea of what credit recovery is. There's no one-stop shop for credit recovery. It takes many different viewpoints. So it could be something like summer school, which has been the traditional mode for us, or it could be something like virtual online classes, which seems to be the push that we're hoping to get to. And essentially it is geared to kids who have failed a class or gives them an opportunity to redo coursework or retake a course. For our purposes, we've been using it a lot for failure of class, but also to give those students who are challenged to get through school as most the opportunity to get the credits they need in order to graduate. So I'm going to turn it over to Amanda so she can kind of talk about why this all kind of has been coming to light.
Yeah, so we meet often as a guidance admin team, and over the past 3 years, we've just seen this significant, steady increase in our kids who come to us with mental health issues and family trauma and just so much lack of support at home, lack of resources. And we just had to find a way to support them so that they could feel success. Because we don't want our kids leaving us thinking like, I've had all these things in my backpack and I can't even get through the day at East Long Meadow High School. So in aligning with our SMART goal of supporting the whole student, I believe that we always have. It's just changed so significantly over the past, I really think, 3 years. We've seen such a huge shift. So we moved to a credit recovery model this year, which we kind of played around with a little bit. It's been interesting, but it's certainly helped many of our students. So I think, Gina, did you want to talk to how these experiences work,
Well, I know that one of these is probably rolling around your head is, well, what does this look like? So currently right now we use the BYU program course, and basically what it is we sign kids up and it's self-paced, it's also standards-based. For next year, we're looking at other models. The one that I think is really going to be beneficial to our students is something called Fuel Education. It was formerly known as Aventa. They changed companies. So I wanted to give you just kind of a viewpoint of what the product looks like so that you can see the rigor that's involved with it, how it works from the student side, but also how it works from the teacher side. This is not something that we say to kids, log on and goodbye. It is monitored, it is tracked, the students are tracked, it's competency-based, so they have to, in order to get to the next level, they have to, pass a certain level, and it's also standards-based. It's also very personalized too, so I'm going to kind of go through these to kind of show you what you can expect. I just have to enter my email, just give me 1 second because I have to enter my email. So this first module shows you what it would look like from the student perspective.
After logging into Peak, students can easily check on their course progress, and once ready to start their day, easily access any of their courses. Within each lesson, students have access to activity resources and specific learning tools to support student success. Tools available include a text reader, dictionary support, and Spanish-English translation support. Throughout the content, keyword support is also provided. Students can meet their teacher in a virtual classroom where they can chat or talk with the teacher along with using a whiteboard to review material. Students can also access support through the online chat support where a certified teacher is available for live support. Fuel Education is determined to make sure that students' learning always comes first.
So that's what it looked like from a student perspective, but I also wanted to show you what the student dashboard would look like because it allows for a lot of interaction with the teacher. So this is the student dashboard piece.
Peak is Fuel Education's open technology platform that features personalized dashboards with a unified view of each user's online program metrics, single-click access to teacher and learner tools, and an interactive display of progress and performance. The Peak dashboards are designed to be viewed on a variety of platforms and devices. When students log into Peak, each of their online classes is displayed on a card. They can flip the card to see their progress in the class, whether they are ahead, behind, or on target, their current average grade of the work completed, and which assignments they have recently completed. From the student dashboard, they can also email a teacher and go straight to their classes. When logging in as a teacher, administrator, or a mentor, the dashboard shows a snapshot overview of your online program or courses. You can see at a glance how many students need attention, are on target, or haven't started their course.
So I won't bore you anymore with that, but essentially what it allows teachers to do is keep track of it. It also has a component to it where a teacher can build the program, so it's very personalized. So if a kid comes in mid-year, it can be developed to kind of catch them up, or if it's the end of the year where you want to give them extra support. It's very, very personalized that way, and it's built by the teacher.
Who is the teacher?
So we're going to get to that. We're going to
Here
talk
or not here?
So there's a personalized teacher on the online end, but we would also have to have a teacher on this end to help students coordinate in their progress. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a few minutes. All right, so moving right along. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, so right now we have 26 students enrolled in online courses, so virtual online courses, which look similar to the Peak program. However, BYU, which we're currently using, seems to be a little more antiquated and not as engaging with the modules and everything like that. So right now it is during the school day. We have a couple of situations where students are doing it on their own time, just based on their schedule, things that they failed if it's their senior year, second semester senior year. But what we've done is we've combined it with our SEL and RFL support block. So we do have a teacher monitoring those students and working with them and reteaching some of the content in those courses. Like I said, it's a little antiquated, so I think moving towards something like this would serve our students much better. So that's where we're headed. We're kind of thinking.
Question, Mr. Dowd?
Yes, yeah.
I'm a little, so if this is a credit recovery model, are they receiving dual credit for the RFL block and the course at the same time?
They're being enrolled in the RFL block, yes, so they'll get that credit, and then they're getting credit for their remediation.
At the same time?
They get a grade. Yeah.
They're getting the grade,
They get
yeah.
the grade.
So they're in one period.
That's what we're doing
getting
now.
double credit.
Yeah, that's what we're doing now.
Yes, because we wanted them, we didn't want them to say,
I'm
here's the
just
course,
trying to
so and again, that's why we're looking to kind of move in different directions. So
The
that we're
SEL
not
is social emotional learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a block already scheduled for that.
We do.
And who oversees that?
The special education teachers.
Thank you.
And one of our adjustment counselors as well.
Okay.
So it's combined.
So
I think it's also just important to note that, to your question, Mr. Fitzgerald, it's important to remember, I think, or just to create some perspective for everybody, that a lot of the students that are working on the credit recovery courses now, the totality of their work isn't necessarily being done all within that RFL block or the SEL support block. But given the nature of the student situations, I think it's important that we add a humanistic side to the discussion around some of these amazing stories and these kids that otherwise in other districts would have maybe dropped out or would have not been pushed to work through some of the discomfort that comes with failing a course and losing hope because of situations that were out of their control at 14, 15, or 16 years old. And so we can much more effectively, when I say we, as a guidance staff, our administrators, our special ed teachers and our adjustment counselor, who do a phenomenal job of supporting these kids daily, can do a really good job with structured time that they already have. So if a student is already, if their IEP already recommends or necessitates an RFL or an SEL block, to us, it seemed like the most logical time to do it, because now we're not pulling them out of academic blocks, where a lot of them need remediation anyways. So it didn't make sense to remove them from an academic block, where they may be falling behind to begin with. We already have a built-in block of an RFL or an SEL where they're getting that support, and this to us seemed like a natural continuation of that support. You know, when you talk about the whole child, the emotional piece and the academic piece for these kids, a lot of these kids, one won't grow without the other, so.
What about the regular education?
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is not exclusive to
Not
special,
at
I
all.
wanna make that
No,
clear.
but, so where would the regular education student fit this in the schedule, or her schedule?
Yeah.
It would be a assigned class, so we're gonna move into
Could
like.
be the SEL, for example?
Yeah, I'm gonna explain how we're thinking it for next
Okay,
year. But if you can take a look at the diagram that's up here, there are two ways that a student can get involved in the credit recovery program. One is during the school day, which would be an SEL course, so it would be a designated spot for that in their schedule. And they could either take a semester course or a full year course. The after-school model, because we have a lot of kids, for whatever reason, can't actually physically make it into the school day, it would be offered 2 days per week under the guidance of our SEL teacher. And then it would be from 1:45 to 3 p.m. So it gives kids the flexibility to kind of move around in terms of delivery piece. Any questions with that so far?
How does that work in terms of graduation requirements? So if kids are responsible for completing 4 years of English, 4 years
Yep.
of math,
Great question.
and then at the same time they're involved in a credit recovery during the school day, would that mean that they would be participating in both an additional math or English class that they're required to pass while at the
It
same
could
time
be.
remediating
We've had,
a
yep,
failure?
we've had situations like that.
Could
yeah.
be.
And how does that burden weigh on a child, like thinking about the stress of now being enrolled in 2 courses simultaneously when I've already failed one?
Well, we do have a lot of kids that do double up, like in math, for example. And one of the things that we found with the credit recovery program, you know, it's optional, so the kid has to buy into it. It's not like
Yeah.
we're forcing them to do it. It's oftentimes them coming to us and saying, I can't get through for whatever reason, and we throw it. We would never put a kid in it that wouldn't be comfortable, because online isn't for everybody,
Right.
right? I mean, I'm taking a course right now online, and it's kicking my butt. And so I know that it's not for everybody, but you have to have the readiness for it. So those are the conversations that we'd have to have with the students. All right, so, did you want to cover this, Amanda, or you want to cover it?
Yeah, so, well, as far as like just the delivery, where if a student needs that SEL support and they're in need of accruing additional credits or remediation, we could kind of stay with that same model. But then for students who, you know, again, don't really want to double up within their school day, or, you know, we'll offer that after-school option as well if they don't need that SEL support. So if we stick with BYU, it's a cost of $60 per class. If we're going to move to that fuel learning, it's a cost per seat. You have reusable seats. Or obviously summer school still remains an option where students can do online through Pathfinder or one of the other area high schools like Agawam, and they pay $200 to remediate. And
So one thing I want to just clarify, we have not decided yet which way we're going to go, because some schools require that the student pay for it, because, you know, they failed the class. We just feel that, you know, for some of our families, these costs are a little bit extravagant for them, and, you know, it's about getting our kids to graduate, giving them the opportunity to succeed. So we feel very strongly that we're moving in the direction we would like to take that burden on through some of our social emotional funds and so forth. So the fuel learning is, essentially it comes in like slots. So there's 10 slots for $2,600. And the great thing about it, though, is when a kid finishes a course, we get to reuse that slot. So it could be something where we're rotating kids in, like semester-based or so forth. If we were to have students pay for it, price is $349 a semester if we would have the parents pay that directly. And that, we just put the summer school costs, I think, is that from Agawam? Is that-
yeah,
They're all very similar. Just to give, for those of you that are unfamiliar with how summer school programs work now, they're still very traditional in the ways that we may remember them, where you go for, you know, right after the 4th of July for 8 weeks, 8 to 10 in the morning or 10 to 12. They meet every day. And then you get a final grade. Those final grades are submitted to us via a transcript from the sending school. Some programs now offer one night a week, where they have a 3-hour course one night a week that starts again, usually after the 4th of July and extends through the duration of the summer. And we do have one online program run through a school in Western Mass where students go to an orientation, they get their login information, and they pace themselves through the program in the summer, and we get the transcripts back. So that's what we all know or remember as traditional summer school looks like now. A lot of kids initially will opt for well, I'll do the online. And then they very quickly realize that, as we were talking about a few minutes ago, it's not for everybody. And there's still a lot of accountability with the online options as well, because you have to log in every day. The teacher, if you will, is still monitoring a student's progress throughout the day in these summer programs. But that's what a traditional summer program looks like now for our kids. Just to give you some perspective, the kids that we send to summer school that may not necessarily be kids who would exhaust the totality of a credit recovery program, although anytime you take a course that you failed, it is credit recovery. Most of our students still elect for the daily at a summer school or the one night a week. And those numbers aren't real high. Just to give you some idea of what it looks like now.
Who pays for the BYU classes now? Do we pay for those?
So it's mixed.
Okay.
For families that we've determined can't afford that, we would take on the cost. Sometimes it's through special education, if it's part of the IEP piece. We've been kind of covering it, but it's been coming, we had 26 kids taking 53 courses. So it's big for our school budget. It's been a little bit, we have to come up with another way. So we're kind of figuring that out.
It seems much less expensive than the $350.
Yeah.
Right.
But then when you look at the 10 slots, if I'm understanding you correctly, that's 10 per semester.
Yeah, the way they
So it's
explain it is
really
like
40
a parking lot,
40
right?
classes, so that makes it $60-something per.
Correct.
So I don't know, even if we charge the students, can we buy the slots, pre-buy them and charge them the 60 instead of the 350?
We could.
I don't
As
see
long
why
as
we would
cover
make
the
them
co-
pay
Yeah,
350.
yeah.
Right.
And the reason why we're looking more toward this other fuel learning is the BYU is like, it really was a stopgap to try to find something that was affordable, that could, be easy access for our students. And it's adequate, but it's not as, so the fuel learning has that extra piece of a live teacher, which I really like. If you have a question, you can go online and ask it, and they can do a demonstration. Whereas the BYU doesn't have all those kind of bells and whistles. Also, I love it too because it also has accommodations for ELL students as well as special ed students. So there's a lot of like built-in reference tools into the program, which I'm not sure if BYU has.
When it says 10 slots a year, is that like a semester and a semester, or are they all year program
All-
and you're in it for the whole year?
So that's
Or you can come and go?
a good question. You can come and go. Traditionally, they said the courses range from 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
So it would work really nicely with like the semester-based kind of structure that we have at the high school.
So you could almost fit 20, 26 kids
Yeah, we
into
could get a
that.
lot of kids in if we planned it accordingly.
Right. And they're in the school doing it?
They could
They
be,
wanted
or they
to?
could also do it at
Just
home.
at
Because we have some kids that, work,
Right.
so want to give them the opportunity. We have kids that, some of the kids have been using this as like almost like an externship or independent study, doing it that way. Just trying to be really flexible. And I have to say, they can speak to it more, but the kids seem to really been having some great success with it so far.
Are there trends currently in what classes are the most in need of credit recovery? So are you seeing this in your Algebra 1? Are you seeing
Right.
this in your English 2?
You guys can speak to that.
Go ahead, John.
No.
Sorry.
No, it's a great question. I think, the trends that I've seen in the 20 years I've been here tend to be more geared towards mathematics. And I think, when you look at our graduation requirements, it's not surprising in that, there's only 2 courses in our school that require 4 years of instruction, and that's English and math. And so math is where we see it most. Where I've really noticed this helping, when you first look at this, the first place I went, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but the first place I went is what a great tool to help seniors have a chance to cross the finish line.
Right.
That's the first place you initially look, right? But what I've noticed with some younger students I have right now is that, as we all know, that, you know, if a kid loses hope in learning and in education, it's really, really tough to get that kid back. And when you lose hope or you don't come in with much as a ninth grader, it's very, very difficult to reinstill in any way hope and belief in that kid that they can cross the finish line. And so where I've really seen it helpful I have a couple student situations right now that I'm working with where these kids just got off to a rough start for reasons that they need to do a better job of controlling, taking more ownership over, but also some that were out of their hands. And so in that case, Mrs. Trulio, these two kids it's math-based for them to look at where their math grades were at the semester point and say mathematically they will not gain any credit in this course, and how far behind will they fall at the end of their freshman year? What incentive are they going to have to come back as a sophomore recharged? And so that's where I've really seen it working. So my initial thoughts were, yeah, this will be great for those seniors who we really have to try to get to the finish line. But I'm noticing it with some of my students that, well, they're believing there's a chance now in their sophomore or junior year where they maybe hadn't before.
I think that's an important fact, because you don't want the kids giving up after the first, you know, because there's a period of adjustment when they cross that they come out of Birchland and they get here, it's like, you know, whatever, it hits everybody different. So to have this, I don't want to call it an option, but this tool is available to help them, I agree with it.
Yeah, and if you look at just the number of kids against almost 900, we're not, you know, we are of the belief that we want our students taking courses at East Long Meadow High School with our teachers. We want them to, but in the world of education that we all work and live in now, one size does not fit all. And we owe it to our kids to try to find other options for them to continue to give them not just the hope and belief, but the academic foundation to keep learning. And so I think that's what this does. I mean, if you look at 26 kids against 900, that's a small number of kids. But the kids that it's impacting is extremely powerful. I had a student this year who, when we met in the fall, credit-wise, she was not on track to graduate, and for all intents and purposes, had given up. Her grades were okay, but she did not believe she was college-bound. She did not believe she was going to get to graduation. And fast forward to March 25th, as we sit here, this girl's going to college. She has belief in herself, and she bought in and did the work required. And it was a lot of extra work. It has not been handed to her. So,
Within the program itself, oftentimes when you go into these online platforms, sometimes it'll put like a kill switch so that you're not allowed to like Google other responses to answers or get access to other types of formula sheets and things like that. Does this new program have some kind of lockdown for the browser?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's called a second computer.
We're just thinking we're offering this at home, and we're just trying to think about.
You saying you wanted to have that?
I mean, I would prefer it to have that. I think if you're thinking about like MCAS 2.0 and you're looking at the browser features then in terms of how it prohibits students from going out to Google Answers, and we're thinking about, you know, mathematics courses or English papers or things that, especially if we're offering that at-home option, we want them to get the academics out of the course overwhelmingly so that they're meeting with success and they can go on to that third level of math, that third level of English. So if they're not getting the academic component from the program that we're proposing, then we just want to make sure that we're not in that same situation and that student's getting a second round of credit recovery. So just trying to think if we're putting something like that into place or if the program offers it.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but
I was gonna
definitely.
say, when it was Aventa, though, you have a time, it's a timed exam, so I'm imagining
You
maybe
can't spend
that's.
too much time.
Yeah, if you're Googling like every
Yeah.
answer, you're not gonna be able to meet that time frame, yeah.
And we don't even know if we're gonna go event, we're just kind of giving you an idea of like some of the things we're looking at right
Okay.
now, so.
I had a question about, because like when we redid the schedule and most of the maths are full year now, and I'm assuming the lower level math, the maths that these kids are going to tend to be, they're all probably full year. senior year, you've got that student, and math is heinous to the student, do we offer a half-year option? So if they fail it, they've got the other half year?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of the math courses for juniors and seniors, but to your point, you're 100% right. The intro level maths and a lot of our maths are single block full year. The typical math that our fourth year student would take who may have not had tremendous success in math, those are offered as semester courses. So, and our first option as counselors is going to have, if credits allow, and the way our system works now is there's an overage of credits built in for graduation. So a student needs 112 credits to graduate, but if you take 32 credits a year, the majority of our students are well past the required number of credits. So our first sort of checkbox would be, will this class fit into a student's schedule second semester? Because my first go is going to be take it again. In some cases, maybe the classes they have second semester are also graduation requirements. And so that's where it can get a little bit tricky. We don't have 2 or 3 years to remediate at this point. We have 4 months to remediate, and so that's when we have to make more difficult decisions. But ideally, we want them to retake the course.
Is there another type of math, this is great, but is there another type of math class out there that we could be offering that might work with these students differently?
And that's initially what the math lit was supposed to be.
Yeah.
We're actually talking about revising that curriculum this summer to make it even more real-world application, because you're right, for those kids who've struggled all 3 years, that fourth year math is really important that we get that piece right.
Yeah.
So we're looking to.
I mean, if you guys come up with something and they want to implement it like the second half, and if it's a semester thing, I won't be here.
So I just want to finish this up. So Amanda, you want to?
Yeah, so as you saw in the proposal, we would like to be able to offer students at least 32 credits if, like, and our rationale was if a kid walks in and has trauma and just can't transition and gets hit, one day after the next, could we potentially allow them to get back on their feet for a year in credit recovery and then transition back to the classroom? So that was kind of our thought process behind offering at least those 32 credits. And again, it's such a small portion of our population, but that was a big piece that we kind of kept going back and forth on, so.
You've worked all the details as far as how it looks in the transcript, eligibility. I'm a little confused, the teacher that is on duty from 1:45 to 2:45, how do they receive payment for that extra hour?
So our teachers have to do at least 1 hour a week for extra help. So we're thinking we're going to work it through that.
Do either of the companies that you're looking at offer professional development for that type of, for these teachers? So thinking about, that's a different type of service you're providing as an educator.
So the educator piece of it would basically just be a monitoring, but they'd have to be trained on the actual software.
And I would assume in some ways the nuances of helping students who have experienced trauma.
Navigate, yeah.
So
that piece, I'm sorry.
Well, both. I mean, like if you're potentially saying that these are students who are severely impacted potentially by trauma or have made not the best decisions leading up to this point where they've failed a course, how do we ensure that teacher who's overseeing these most delicate students understand the academics? Because if you're doing an Algebra 2 credit recovery, you've got to have the academic component to support the student alongside the program, but you also have to have the capacity to support that child as a human and bring them up.
And that is why we were asking for a social emotional teacher for next year, because that person would be the person to kind of do that dual kind of support, the academic support as well as the processing piece. So that's what we're asking for next year.
Okay. That makes me a little uneasy, to be 100% truthful, just because you might be hiring somebody who is strong around social emotional competencies, but not necessarily academically strong across a variety of courses, knowing the demands of the high school standards.
But that
so just
person,
thinking about that.
Yeah, that person would essentially, though, in terms of the credit recovery piece, just be there to help them get through the logistics, help them get through the communication. They wouldn't necessarily be teaching the courses, because you're right, to find somebody who could teach the full gamut of high school would be incredibly challenging. A lot of the high school social emotional models that are in place, such as Ludlow, some of the other near areas, including in the LPBEC, they're really utilizing those positions to focus more on the management piece of the student, the social emotional piece, organizational piece. So that, I don't know if that,
It does, but I'm just
Yeah.
thinking like if you're in the moment and you've got a kid in front of you who's got a question on Algebra 1 and you
Yep.
haven't taken Algebra 1 since you were in ninth grade,
Yep.
you don't want them also looking at someone saying like, hey, I don't know.
so
let's
that's
go-
why, that's
let's
why,
Google it.
that's why the Fuel
Yeah.
Learning Program has a live teacher that is available for those specific kind of scenarios.
Okay.
This is why we want to go with the Fuel Learning, because the BYU that we're currently using doesn't have that support, so it's just another layer. And from what I understand, they are content teachers that oversee those particular classes.
Okay.
Like, for example, we know that there's going to be some courses, it's going to be challenging, like, so for example, chemistry, think about taking that online, that's going to be something interesting to see, and as well as foreign language, because a lot of the research shows that foreign language is not always applicable to the online learning environment for obvious reasons. So we're definitely going to have to play it through to see what our challenges are and what works well.
We're kind of discussing what type of motion to make, because you still have some details to work out, am I correct?
Yes,
I mean,
yeah.
we talked about the teacher after school, we talked about,
Yeah,
we're
we've
not sure
been-
if you're gonna go
yeah.
with peak, for sure.
So we've been doing this year, I mean, like, we've been doing it anyway, but we just wanted to kind of educate you into the options that we're thinking of. Like, you know, obviously, we want your feedback in terms of the cost piece, because I think we're all kind of, you know, not really sure where that goes. I think what might make sense is as we move toward the end of the year, give you an idea of how many students next year that might be
Yeah,
eligible
that'll
for
work.
this, and then maybe come back and share those numbers
I
with
think
you.
we
and-
wanna approve the concept with them coming back to us with further information.
I think we can just come to some consensus on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we need to
And
vote on it.
personally, I'd like to further explore
Yeah.
Yes.
us funding it versus the student. I don't want
Right.
to put any more hurdles.
Yeah, I agree. We-
In
we-
a way, you know,
yeah.
always, we
Yeah.
can't fund everything,
Absolutely.
but.
But to that point, it would be easier if we know numbers, you know,
Yeah.
if they have
Right,
numbers
so
for
we
it.
tell you, we have like, you know, 20
Yeah,
kids
all right.
next year.
Then there's really nothing to vote on tonight, because we've got consensus.
I think
to-
we're all consensus, we agree, we
Yeah,
like
we
the
agree
goal.
with
And we just
concept.
want you to be aware, it's a new
Right.
thing that a lot of schools are offering, and we think it has great value to our students.
Okay,
Fantastic.
thank you.
Go make it better, not awful math.
So Dr. Flynn, we're now moving to part 2 of your presentations, and that is a program of studies.
Okey-dokey. So if you take a look in your agenda packet, we have a few courses and just kind of like minor nuances in terms of name changes. So I'm going to have Ms. Lucrezia, Ms. Ellingsworth walk you through all the different changes.
Okay, so there's 5 proposed changes to the program of studies for next year, 2019-2020. The first is in the area of graduation requirements under our current language department. A name change from foreign language to classical and modern languages. A name change, as a department, they did prefer to change the name to classical and modern languages because it recognizes the value of both classical languages like Latin and Greek, as well as modern languages such as Spanish and French. They did find that in surrounding districts such as Longmeadow, Holyoke, Amherst, and Minnechaug, they did switch from foreign language to either world languages as their title, or world and classical languages, or classical and modern languages. So that was one proposed for the program studies. The second one would be a new course under our music department, concert jazz band, and it would be offered as 4 credits all year long, and to students in grades 10, 11, and 12. The prerequisite would be the permission of the instructor. And if you looked at the attached course description, it gives more detail.
Is that a club now? Is that how we do the jazz band? What is that now? It's a
Would
club?
it replace it?
After school club.
So it'll replace that, in
Yes,
theory.
so really, the concert jazz band course is a hybrid performance of the ensemble combining band and jazz. So a combination of both.
And it would replace the after-school jazz band.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Would it, or?
It might be
I
an
don't know.
extension
Yeah,
of
I
it.
don't
Just
know
like
why
how
it's
we have the
replaced.
chorus, and then we have like the duly noted.
Yeah.
Because the other one's,
pieces.
the other one's fun, you know.
Just to get them
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
okay.
Wildly popular.
Give them another option.
Right.
Ms. Illingsworth, is that replacing History of Rock and Roll, or is it History of Rock
No,
and Roll?
History is still
No, History of Rock and Roll will still be running.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, because I want music for all students, I know
Yeah.
we're getting more and more specific,
Yeah.
fine, but
Yeah.
I'm glad it's still
Okay.
being offered.
We have we're in the MSC of our master build for next year, and we've cross-checked all those lists against each other as far as all the different new and existing music classes. So we're not seeing many conflicts.
You're building that schedule. Also, a lot of singletons?
The singletons are great.
Yeah. Somebody used to do it, I don't think so.
We have a computer now that does it. Sorry, couldn't resist.
Moving on to our third, it was in the area of social studies. It would be for the advanced placement in U.S. history. They would like to change it to 8 credits all year long. Currently, it is running 4 credits. The instructors felt that there was not a significant amount of time to get through it, and the students would be able to meet the U.S. History 1, U.S. History 2 graduation social studies requirement.
Okay, pause, Mr. Elizabeth. So on the course requirements of program of studies, it says pass 3 social studies courses. So how are you gonna manipulate that statement, you know what I'm saying? It's now, because if I'm an AP US History course, I'm taking 2 courses, not 3. So at some point, you're gonna have to adapt that, that's all.
Okay.
So-
Well, it should be adapted as part of this.
It should,
Right.
That should be right.
You know what I'm saying? You know,
Yep,
Yes, thank you.
So before, was it a half year for 4 credits?
It was a
Yes.
semester-based course.
Yes.
Well, it's had an evolution, so under
Yeah.
Mr. Mallor, if you remember when Mr. Mallor
Right.
was here, it was the 8-year.
Yeah.
And then, because we had some conflicts, we were trying to work in, for the
Oh, so it
student
went to 8
schedule.
to 4.
And now
Now back to
8.
Now we're back
Okay, so
because-
I was
Alright.
very confused.
Yeah.
Good, no, it makes sense.
All right,
Okay.
Okay.
and it counts as both US History 1 and 2, and then they're done, they just have to take one other social studies, which technically they have to take freshman year, which is world.
The world.
And that's like a
Modern world.
requirement?
Not a
or just
requirement,
That is not a
It just happens to
It
be
just
what it
happens to be
fits.
one of the offerings during the freshman year.
Okay.
Okay, the fourth change is again in the area of social studies. The change would be for the AP psychology. Currently it is 4 credits full year. They would like to plan to change it to 8 credits full year.
Same reasoning?
The AP curriculum has changed, they've added actually more content, so they're looking to expand it for that reason. And also one of the things that we found with our students is we want to develop more of those research and writing skills, so the instructor of the course felt that that could be added as a major component as well.
So is it gonna be 80 for both terms, or?
Correct.
And US History will be 80 for
Correct.
Both terms.
Both the same.
Both the same, 84, yep, 8
And how many
credits.
8 credit classes are we gonna have roughly at this point?
A lot.
It's gonna be a lot.
Schedule should know.
Yeah, I think it's 4. You have your AP Calc, AP Bio, these 2, when camera and physics.
five.
So you have 7.
Okay, thank you.
And lastly is in our technology and engineering department. They would like to add a principles of engineering. It's a 4 credit all year long course. This course is a foundation course of the project Lead the Way, and it's offered to students in grades 10, 11, and 12. The prerequisite for this course would be a B- or better in Intro to Engineering, which our freshmen do take. This course is the second of the 3-year Project Lead the Way program, which is being funded by the $35,000 grant we were awarded last year.
I meant to ask one more question. On advanced placement in US History,
Yep.
it says grade 10. If I'm a grade 11 student, I'm not allowed to take AP US History? Let's say I transfer from another school, and can that be grade 10, 11, and 12 for AP US History? I'm just asking.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could take it in 11th grade. Most of our,
The answer is yes? Yeah.
Most of our students take it in 10th, but of
Right,
course, we've had
exactly.
students that have taken 11th grade or 12th grade,
So that
correct?
could be expanded,
Yeah.
okay.
Will any of these require additional staffing?
No.
He's the FTE.
That was the question asking credit recovery.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
I think we should approve this.
We're gonna approve, so then we're looking at, I need a motion to approve the changes to Program of Studies 2019-2020 school year.
So
Just a
moved.
quick question on the motion.
Oh.
Should you include some of the revisions that we just talked about, such as more than 10th grade? And
Yes.
Well, as presented,
History.
as presented will encompass it.
as well as the change to a graduation requirement, so that you're putting on that page that says graduation requirements, that the AP US History counts.
But I think as presented, we're covered.
Oh, but we didn't talk about that, did we?
It was mentioned.
It was
I just
mentioned.
want to make
So how many
sure.
changes other than the ones they brought 5? But we've modified 2 other
Modified
sections.
2 of them.
Right.
So you
Right in the
modified
same
the
section?
AP
Yeah.
US History, and you
Yeah,
modified
it's-
the.
it's all part of
First
this.
requirement.
Yep.
The only question I have, Mr. Fitzgerald, just to make sure we're all clear when we go back to make these changes, is you're gonna have to help me because I forget the specificity, but you had a question relative to US History 1 as it currently runs and AP US and a change in graduation
No,
requirements,
see, right now it says past 3 social study courses.
which is still the case. That doesn't change. Remember, it's a small cohort of students who may
Yeah, but
take
AP
it.
History is one course.
Correct, but it's one course for 8 credits.
Now that it's
Right.
full year, you're getting that US 1 curriculum along with the AP curriculum.
How many
So
does
that
that
count as
count?
two?
So
towards?
that's 2 right
Well,
there.
that's what we're
That's the
saying,
question.
but it's
Yeah.
one course.
I just want to make sure we're clear in understanding that the 12 credit requirement doesn't change.
No, not that, I'm just
No.
saying the description of 3 social
Saying
study
yes.
courses, it
But-
can't be 2.
And so you should probably word it as
Yes.
12 credits
Yes.
instead of the 3
Units.
credits.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Kathy, you have that?
We want to try to, want to make the motion again, Mr. Fonseca.
I move to approve the high school program of studies for 2019-2020 school year as presented, encompassing all changes that were presented to us tonight.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
A second.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Unanimous again, Ms. Saletti. Okay, moving now to our third and final presentation of the program of studies. Dr. Flanagan, request to identify top students, please.
Okay, so just to give you some history, last year, the ELPS school committee made it their goal to eliminate class rank and essentially the school valedictorian position. As such, the high school administration and guidance staff were asked to conduct research on the topic and put forth a recommendation that would support the elimination of rank. At the end of last year, we presented our detailed findings to the school committee, which resulted in the elimination of class rank and valedictorian at each elementary high school. At the school committee meeting, a small group of students voiced opposition to the elimination of class rank. As a result, the high school administrative and guidance staff were asked to look into a way that would recognize our highest achieving students at graduation in some capacity without using the class rank system. We determined that we were already acknowledging those top students through our National Honor Society. Our National Honor Society membership is based on GPA 4.2 on a 4.5 scale, community service, contributions to school and community leadership, and the demonstration of good character. The National Honor Society students represent the top 8 to 10% of the junior and seniors at East Limino High School based on the characteristics described above. This 8 to 10% is the equivalent of approximately 15 to 20 students out of an annual class average of approximately 210 students. At graduation, these students are recognized through the wearing of the gold honor cords and with a designation in the graduation program. To provide you some other historical context, 4 years ago, we changed our GPA structure to align with the College Board recommendations. This change made NHS acceptance more difficult and competitive, now recognizing a smaller percentage of the graduating class. This reduced the number of students who were able to achieve a minimum benchmark to apply to NHS by approximately 50%. In summary, our formal recommendation to honor the school committee request to acknowledge the top achieving students at graduation, absence of a class rank, is to continue with the NHS recognition practices. Any additional recognition we feel would be redundant of the current NHS practice. We have also, just a point of reference, we have brought this issue to our school council, which consists of parents, teachers, and students, and they supported the NHS designation. Additionally, our guidance class would also like to continue to honor those students through the NHS process and as we have eliminated class rank. Recently, we were asked by a school committee member to provide the average GPA over the past 2 years on the top 2 high school students. This GPA would be 4.665. Currently, we have 4 students who would qualify for recognition based on that recommendation. So that's the history, and I open it up for discussion.
I had a question about NHS first, before I move on. When it was both honors and AP were at that 5-point level, what was the National Honor Society GPA requirement at that time? Was it still 4.2 or was it 4?
It was 4.2 on a 5.0 scale.
4.2 on a 5.0 scale. So that has not been changed since we made it considerably more difficult to get to that level. And I remember asking back in the day, should that be looked into? Because the National Honor Society wants you to have, and of course, every school can do their own thing, with the minimum being basically an 85. And we don't want that for our students. But I did notice that a lot fewer students are getting it. And going back to the fact that we don't need to be handing trophies out for an 85, but I think that that should really be thought about. Because a lot of colleges do look into that. A lot of colleges may wonder why they didn't make it. They may not be aware what our standards are. So I know I had asked years about that, and I don't think anything, obviously nothing was done about it, but I would like that to be done. Thought about, reconsidered, because, you don't want 100 kids getting it, but the fact that we're having fewer and fewer kids attain this goal when really they're doing better than the students that have been on it in the past. And I think that that is unfair to them. And it should have been adjusted when we adjusted back in 2016 or 15 or whatever it was. Now, if I may, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Oh, go ahead. Open discussion.
When we eliminated valedictorian, it was made very clear that we were trying to eliminate a lot of things. But the one thing, and we made it very clear, and I had my other members take a look at that video, it was made to sound like, and I would not have voted for it, that there was going to be a cohesive group that was going to work with students and maybe work with other people within the school to come up with this designation. I don't know how all of you feel. You all know that this was big in my family. And I think some of you think that it's this, oh, there's such trauma and drama and all this other stuff. It's not. When a student walks into school and a student says, I want to attain straight A's straight on, that is their choice. And that is a wonderful thing if that is their goal. Okay, if they want to run out on a field until they vomit because that is their goal and they're going to get strong and they're going to do it, that is their choice. If they want to play the violin until their fingers bleed, that is their choice. If it gives them joy, it gives them focus, it gives them whatever it is, that is what it gives them. We have taken that away from these kids, and my intent was not to take this away from these kids. Okay? My intent was to take the adult chaos and the other student chaos around them away from these kids. And what we've done right now is we've given this whole class this year no closure on this. When we made it, I believe, abundantly clear that this is what we wanted. It was bad enough we took it away, and now we're just going to say no. We have every dang athlete in the world in a bronze 8x10 over by the gym. We don't even have a plaque for the kids in the past who've attained this, okay? I feel that we need to honor them. I feel that it's not going to hurt anybody. It's not pitting children against one another. They can work together toward this goal, okay? Because you told us a great story last year about how these two kids worked together and they were both working toward it. My kid did that too on behalf of a friend. Not someone that they were working alongside of to this, but they made decisions in her particular thing that she knew would put her in jeopardy. And that's what kids do because they're good, and in general they are. And the situation wasn't the two kids that year. It was all the chaos around. I feel we should choose, I think, a 4.7, and if the students attain it, I think that we should call them Spartan Scholars. I think that it should be an additional designation with maybe a red cord to go with a National Honor Society. I would like to see it put on our school that we send out to the colleges. What's it called?
Transfer
Profile. possibly that if you attain a 4.7, you become a Spartan Scholar on whatever our scale is. It's kind of hard to know where you can go. It depends on what AP classes you take and how many you take. So to define an actual GPA, I understand is of our highest is very difficult. And I also think it should be mentioned on graduation. I think that maybe even possibly on their transcripts that they've attained this GPA, therefore this is what they are. It's not going to bother anybody. It's not going to hurt anyone in the school. It's not even going to help them get into college. They're already there at that point. But if it gives them the acknowledgement that they took the hardest courses and this was their goal, like any other goal a student in the school has, I think we should do it.
If I could just add, I
Please.
wholeheartedly agree. I'm currently, to be honest, I'm not in that range, but me and a large number of my classmates, we may be below that range, but we fully recognize that there are about 4 or 5 students that do deserve that extra recognition, and it's so unfair that they're not getting it. Like, it's not about bragging or being the best. It's about they worked so hard for 4 years, and they're not getting what they deserve. Like, in terms of acknowledgement from the community, there should be something extra than NHS, and I really, if there's not, I would be very disappointed for those 4 or 5 people that really deserve it.
So, Ms. Vice President, fostering open discussion, what you're recommending at this point
Yeah.
is that a certain designation, 4.7, be used.
Yeah.
And that 4.7 be something consistent from year to year.
Yep.
And those students who reach 4.7 or above, I have a different designation, for example, on graduation ceremony, they can wear a different color sash or
Add something.
tassel, something.
Whatever it is, yeah.
Something. And that you feel that this should be something that should be recognized in the school profile too.
I think so. I think that they should know that, I mean, we're not ranking our students anymore, but we are acknowledging the fact when they reach that level. And unfortunately, I don't think that's something that can go when you're applying for colleges because it's too soon at that point.
Yeah, right.
But,
Are you thinking recognize it in the school profile or the graduation program?
program and the profile, and maybe something on their transcripts. So their transcripts will already be done, but maybe they'll apply for scholarship, and maybe they can, when they're in college, and it'll be on their high school transcript, and it might help them with that. It wasn't my intent to completely move. My intent was to have students work together toward a goal, and it would be like, saying to a student who went for music for districts and saying, oh, we're not gonna let you have that because we don't care. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm done talking.
No, that part I don't understand. I certainly can empathize with nearly all of what you shared, but I think when we speak in generalities about how this decision has affected the totality of a class, I would argue that is inaccurate, and I would absolutely argue that saying we don't care is not even close to accurate.
That is I'm not saying it affects the totality of the class.
If I could just continue for a minute, I think one of the things that I've learned through this experience, through great dialogue with students like Jake and other students who are passionate about this issue and have been willing to engage in discourse that has been honest and respectful and understanding of the process, and I'm all for kids in any avenue they pursue being honored. I've said this to Jake before, who I've worked with for 4 years and I love very much, and to some of his classmates as well, where this issue hits really close to home. We had a great discussion the other day. And even though we're talking about this isn't about rank, what really drove that discussion and has driven similar discussions that I've had this year with students is that very word of rank. Well, you, meaning me, took away rank from us. You took away rank.
You did that.
No. I'm not a point the finger person. I'm a what's in the best interest of the kids person. So I don't. Whoever, all of us collectively, we were tasked by this school committee to do research on the effectiveness of rank. We did that research. in earnest. We presented our findings to the committee, and we made a decision collaboratively, I thought, about how we were going to move forward. I think knowing full well that there would be a handful of students who would internalize and be affected by this decision because, as you pointed out, they care. What I struggle with, and I don't know that I speak for everybody at the table, but I certainly speak for myself, what I struggle with is when we have a conversation and say, well, this isn't about rank, this isn't about rank, but let's in some way, in an extra way, highlight 4 or 5 students, and we don't really know what that GPA is going to be yet, but we'll pick a number, we'll pick a designated number, and we'll honor those 4 students every year in a different way. To me, that is synonymous with the word rank, because the people that are most affected by this are our students, a small population of kids who, to your point, and I agree with your point, it's very important to them to be at the top of their class. And maybe I'm missing something, I'm happy to hear an explanation. I don't know how that is different by definition than rank. When we have a very small percentage of our students who have received National Honor Society recognition, not just for academics, for character, citizenship, contribution to school and community. We all know how kids are selected to NHS. What I struggle with is a conversation we had the other day where it was said to us repeatedly by a phenomenal young man, I guess what we're looking for is a nod, kind of a tip of the cap. And I said, makes perfect sense to me. What would that nod look like? What would it look like? And tell me, because at the end of the day, this decision isn't mine to make, but for me personally, what I wanted to know was, why is that nod so important when the nod comes from being able to apply to the top 5 to 10% of colleges and universities in this country? The nod comes from the work ethic, the commitment that you've established, that you've created, that you've earned, that will carry with you for the rest of your life. The nod is the very small percentage of students who receive the majority of our awards at Student Achievement and Awards Night. The nod is getting merit-based scholarships of $25,000 to $30,000 to $50,000 a year. There are lots of nods along the way. And so, I guess for me, it's about understanding how adding something different when we eliminated rank as a group is not by definition ranking students.
We're not ranking them anymore. It's not like number 1 and number 2 and number 3 and they're all fighting for that number 1 spot.
Well, no, the
That
only
was
difference is
problem.
we just pick a GPA now and they fight for that
And the other,
GPA.
but they don't have to fight.
They're not pitted
They're
against
not
each other.
pitted
So
against like pit bulls
Oh,
anymore.
I would argue that they would be.
Okay,
But- but I don't-
I don't want it to be back.
Okay.
Can we all agree that there, in the past, there's value to, or there's honor value, or whatever, honor or value, whatever you want to call it, to valedictorian, second ranked class, third ranked class. We decided collectively to do away with class ranking so that there wasn't that race, so that it wasn't craziness.
And
it wasn't-
colleges have an issue with it too sometimes.
Right, so it
Yeah.
made sense to do that. So I think what Beth is proposing is somewhat of both. And I also like your analogy about the athletes, the student athletes in this building that we certainly recognize. And so at graduation, perhaps it's an opportunity to say it to those kids that did all that they could do and succeeded and had great success, something I could never accomplish. But we still don't, now we don't have the class ranking, race to do, which I think is what you're trying to
Yeah,
accomplish.
I think that's what we're trying to get rid of, but.
And where this is new, Ms. Boucher, I compliment you because this is new for us to take away class rank. And I think we have to have this open discussion because if we're gonna implement something new as we've done with class rank, what are the ripple effects?
Right.
So if I may turn to you, Mr. Brady, as someone who treats you as an equal, as all of us do in the school committee, I'm a little taken aback. You got very emotional and use words like unfair. Now, I'm looking at this from this point of view, Mr. Brady. We're honoring National Honor Society. And that's a national honor, a very prestigious honor. why should we be picking 3 or 4 kids off of the National Honor Society and honor them more? I'm a little confused about that.
Well, to be completely honest,
Yeah.
within the even within the National Honor Society, from my experience at least, speaking personally, there's a bit of a distinction between the lower end and the higher end. And
Is there really?
yes,
Oh, okay.
the higher end, there's just this year alone, and I'm sure in the past and in future years, there's always going to be those 3, 4, 5 students who put in the extra mile, who make sure everything they do is the best they can do, and who never do anything against what, like, you know what I mean, like.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, I
So- so I-
describe it. I'm not debating that what's the value, I'm debating, we're already recognizing them, why do they have to be
Well,
recognized?
but in the past, I think we recognize those students at graduation specifically because that's it, that's the
Well, we recognize the
culmination of it all.
valedictorian, the rest were all National Honor Society students had a sash, and the valedictorian was recognized. That's all we recognized.
Right.
Well, I think one thing, like thinking about what Mr. Martin just shared, the idea of these nods, and I think one thing, like hearing the conversation now, all of those nods though are external to ELPS. So National Honor Society is set up and run through an outside agency. We have our own chapter, but those are different requirements. Merit scholarships, done through an outside agency.
Can I just correct you, Sarah, because National Honor Society, we do have a role in how that runs.
Right, but it's still a national entity. It's not, while there's a chapter at ELPS and ELHS, it's still, the other components of it are facilitated through a national organization. So like the community service, those types of things. So it's still not something that's specific to being at East Meadow High School. There are other factors that go into it beyond just what ELHS is saying they want it to be.
But isn't it, I mean, it's because of the work they've done here.
Right, but so all of those factors though are outside in some way of something within the school itself. So maybe like when you think about a valedictorian or a salutatorian, those are things that are specific to the school itself. They come with a different kind of, I think, nod, because that's me with my peers, that's me at my high school, that's me getting something from an institution that I've spent 4 years at, as opposed to this institution recognized me. I became part of something that's a national organization. I've been honored by getting accepted to a college. All those are external to those 4 years at the school. So maybe for some of these students who have achieved that highest rank, getting a nod from the school itself through that designation would feel more like this was something I accomplished here. This is my crew behind me saying, I did this here, as opposed to someone external to the high school saying, hats off. And that's just a thought in terms of where that nod might be coming from a student's perspective.
Can I just
Sure.
clarify a couple of points? So first, as far as the NHS goes, yes, it is a national organization, but it is run locally here, where the students, they don't automatically get in because they achieve a certain GPA.
Right.
There's a panel of teachers, I sit on that panel as well, where we review the applications that the students submit, and they are elected by their teachers to that committee. So,
To that point, have there been
For that
students
society.
that have been, when we did class ranking prior,
Yep.
that are top-ranked students that weren't in National Honor Society?
They're always in.
you mean like students
The
who?
valedictorian in this.
The
Like
top
Alabama.
5 students every year, are they always in top 10,
So I've
top
been
20?
here for 12 years. I was NHS advisor for at least 2 of those. I've been on this committee for 8. I don't recall anybody within that top 5 or 6 who have not been in NHS. So they have been acknowledged in that way.
Not let anybody in NHS that had the GPA and had decent, like good standing?
There have been students who have applied for NHS who have not necessarily gotten in the first time. Usually those kids, when they reapply, they do get in because they've taken time to bolster their resume locally through doing community service, engaging more leadership activities here. You know, so it's not one of those things that, you know, just because you achieve that GPA, it's handed to you, and then NHS just is run at the national level. They also have local commitments that they have to make, like tutoring hours, community service. They have monthly meetings. So it is. I definitely.
So does that not differentiate it though from true academic achievement if it requires other things? And I'm not dismissing those other things, those are important to the whole being, but I'm just saying if we're truly trying to, you know, number one ranking,
And I think
It's different,
to
though.
that point, it's one of those things, there's 4 pillars, you know, so we're looking at the whole child and not necessarily that student who achieves that academic excellence, which is why I think that designation carries so much more value when we're talking about graduation, we're talking about leadership, we're talking about service, we're talking about grades, we're talking about character. So for me, personally, I see that as something that carries more weight and value when I'm seeing those kids walk through graduation with those yellow cords. And to the other point, when we were talking about that group of 4 or 5 or whatever that number might be, I struggle with that arbitrary number that we're shooting for, because we have a set number of a 4.2 for NHS, and that average right now used to be, it was an 84 before, now it's at a 93. So kids, in order to get into NHS, they have to have a 93 average, that's an A average, right? The number that we're setting now for whatever this top 4 or 5 might be, I'm not sure what that is connected to.
Well, what's the 93 connected to for NHS?
It's an A.
It's just an A.
Yeah.
Get you an A.
So we have students who have a solid A average in all of their courses in order to apply for the NHS.
So that's a 4.2 based on a 4.5 scale?
4.5 scale.
But we really are higher than a 4.5 scale, aren't we? Because some kids are above a 4.6 at this point.
If you're incorporating the AP courses, that's where that GPA rises. But right now, we're in compliance with what College Board recommends for high schools.
The only reason why I came up with 4.7 is because I was thinking that there would be some discourse and that there would be meetings with kids, and the thought process over the last 2 GPAs, that an attainable GPA was what I was trying to get. I don't know what the attainable GPA is. You know what I mean? I know at my kids' day, you couldn't quite get to that 5 because there wasn't honor Spanish back in the day, so it was like whatever it was. And so I guess that's why I don't have any clue what the highest attainable GPA could be now. It's all based on how many APs that you take. So that's where I just kind of picked the 4.7 because you were saying it was 4.66, and I thought it's an even number, and I don't think there's such a thing as a 4.8. So I guess that's why I picked that.
Yeah, but did you qualify? You didn't actually pick it. You
I
had
didn't
some
pick
research
it. I
done.
did research. I did do research
Okay.
based on yeah, and I
of that. You did some
yes,
research,
and
okay.
Mr. Smith had got me some numbers too. So
Well, and if the intent is 3, 4, 5 students per year to have this acknowledgement, then I think you're gonna achieve it, it sounds like,
Yeah.
because we're in that range now. There could be years with 2, there could be years with 7.
there could be years with
But if
none.
you set it ahead of time, then it takes away some of the arbitrariness, because at least they know what they're shooting for.
But, and I've been kind of sitting here listening to everything, but doesn't it circle right back to rank? In my mind,
No,
it
it
does.
doesn't though.
Doesn't.
It
In my
doesn't,
mind, it
because there's
does.
no 1, there's no 2, there's no 3. They're
But
not,
there will
it's
be
not,
amongst
it's
that
not
group.
rich against I.
No, they're not.
It's
I-
me against the number.
Well,
They
you know,
usually take
I'm
the same
just the way
classes
I
side
feel.
by side.
I don't know,
anyway.
I'm talking,
Kids.
we're hired to talk, I'm just asking, I don't know, you tell me.
And you are telling everyone that those are your top 4 students, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes, you are
within
telling them that, you're
And then
right.
so it circles back to rank
But
in
we
my
do it in
mind.
sports, and we can't admit that we don't, I mean, that's got a point, look at the far wing.
What do you mean we do it in
We
sport?
recognize our top athletes, so why can't we recognize our top?
We are.
But we are.
But
Well,
what's the relative top? How many, what's the percentage of athletes that have made the Hall of Fame? 2%, 20%, I don't know.
But
So-
I
so
think
where's-
the only reason I think it's a little bit different conversation, well, it's a lot different for me. We're talking about 2 different worlds, the athletic world and the academic world. The committee that sits on the Athletic Hall of Fame is so separate from the daily work we do with students relative to academics. I couldn't even begin to intelligently speak on their criteria, but I don't view them.
But the acknowledgement
as
is
the
there.
same.
So for the student, the acknowledgement is there.
But not for current
We're
students.
just saying here, how do we acknowledge? Well, but where's the academic acknowledgement?
Awards night, honor rolls.
Student of the month.
It's valid.
Student of
It's
the
valid.
month.
Yep.
Gold tassels. Here's the thing,
Scholarships.
I'm not, neither one is the hill that I personally, again, I'm speaking for myself, neither one is personally the hill I want to die on.
Right.
But my thought is, as we are guiding students, and what we've all been very open about discussing, what rank, the culture that we thought it created here, and then doing research on the importance or lack thereof in rank in the eyes of the colleges from all over the country that we researched, the research that we did with other high schools. So we eliminate rank. If we in some way are going to recognize our high-level students, again, not the hill I want to die on. I just am having trouble wrapping my head around the difference between if that's the case, Mrs. Trulio made a great point about the nod, that kid knew who the valedictorian was. Well, without rank, that title doesn't exist. So in any way, and this is just me thinking out loud, in any way we dress up the nod, in any number we create, we can argue all we want that kids are not going to compete against one another. And I will tell you, based on 20 years of doing it at this school, that statement I do not agree with at all.
How?
They will absolutely compete with one another.
Why? Because they can both get it. They can
Yeah,
both get it.
and I don't think it changed the competitiveness between, because they
These are
know
gonna be
each other's
competitive
GPA.
kids.
So one of the
It's their
questions-
nature.
So it's the external validation, or not even validation, but acknowledgement that I think Jake referred to, and I think Beth is talking about. I think that's the difference, though. I think the race will still be on, whether it's got some other title or not. I don't know. I'm asking you all.
Yeah, I don't see how it's different than rank. I don't, and what I am concerned about is whatever number we pick from one year to the next,
It's gonna be the same number from here on in. It's gonna be a number that's set, and that is the number we go with. And maybe that,
so I think that solidifies us at rank even more by setting a number.
Can I ask
So
a
the-
clarifying question?
Yeah.
In terms of like honor roll?
Sure.
Do we have high honors?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just gonna put that out there. So we're already ranking on a semester basis when those, or a quarter basis when that's coming out. So
Yep.
just thinking about when we have those types of designations already in place, we're inherently kind of doing the same thing that we're
And that's
asking about.
As a culture, we have that competitiveness, like
Yeah.
in sports, in
In sports,
academia, like,
academics,
it's
and
everywhere, but like,
music.
when we were talking to Jake and another student the other day, it's always that means to an end, right? Like, I'm the valedictorian, I get into Yale, I'm at Yale, what's next? Like, I'm Tom Brady, I win a Super Bowl, what's next? Like, what about the internal stuff? And I think that that's where, I think, as a mom, as a counselor, I'm like, are we doing what's right by our kids by ranking, or like even all the achievement, right?
Then
Like,
there's the thought of an additional designation would cause undue stress upon our students. Is that what we're thinking? I'm just trying to
not,
understand what you're trying, what the,
I wish we could be driven by that desire to just wanna be great within ourselves and to give
It's a
back.
larger institutional
It's-
problem
it's-
when you
it's
think
such a-
about
oh,
sports
you're-
and
and I-
music and all
I
of that.
100% agree with you, yes,
So
it's
if
a
you
bigger-
have students who this is their thing, this is
Right.
what
Oh,
drives
absolutely.
them out of bed every morning, this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what pushes them to take that 8-credit AP course we just approved, then let them do it. And
We can
let's-
also argue, Phil, that that is not always a good thing. It's
It's
not
not
always a
always a
healthy
good
thing.
thing, but either is it always a good thing to go out and hit a summer workout before you, because you wanna make varsity track, or it's not always a good thing to, take on extra music courses because you wanna have a certain designation when you achieve high honors in that. So I think to potentially not honor kids who have made this a mission, or that it is intrinsically driving them, I think we might be doing a disservice to them, because like you said, they're already kind of fueled to do this work, and they're already, regardless of whether they're rank or whatever designation we might come to, like they're driving themselves in that regard anyways. Why not honor them for that drive?
And to your point, Mrs. Trulio, we asked kids, I've had great conversations with kids this year where I've asked them.
Sure.
Has the very pointed question, has the elimination of rank motivated you any less? Has it, and when you talk about the types of students and young people that we're talking about in this very small cohort,
Right.
it has not in any way lessened their desire to achieve as much as they can academically. Not in any way. So your point is well taken. For me, I just don't see how it's different. Maybe that's an internal struggle I gotta get over, but I just don't see how it's different.
Let me pause here. I mean,
sorry about that.
this is a policy change in some way, so that we could have a second reading. Does the school committee wish to give this a 2-week moratorium? And maybe have a little more research done on this? Or does the school committee feel like, I know my position, I know what I'm gonna vote, let's do it?
I know my position, and I don't think we should let these kids wait any longer.
why, would you do it this year, you're talking about? Not this
I
year, it'd
think
have to be
these,
next year.
no, as of 2019,
You're
these
talking
kids
this
need.
graduating class.
This graduating class it starts with. Because we discussed this, and it was, I got the feel of the video that I had, the last video, that it was gonna be discussed with students, it was gonna be figured out. And I
Beth, it
know-
was discussed at our school council where there are students on that, so I want to make that clear.
And was that?
We weren't
which
told we were
school
supposed to
council
talk
meeting?
to a certain group of students or else we would have done that. I mean, we felt that our governing body is our school council and our administrative team, and we work with our colleagues, so more direction on that for next time would be helpful, but we did vet it through those sources that we utilize to make decisions in our school.
And I can absolutely say that I've had multiple conversations throughout the year with students. It's always the same students. And that's why, at the end of your remarks, I just wanted some clarification, because the notion that this is going to affect an entire class is, I absolutely am with you in your point of those top handful of kids that have been in some way affected by this. Do I believe that it has affected their performance in the classroom? No. Their character? No. Their commitment to East Meadow High School? No, because that's what kind of kids they are. They're phenomenal young men and women. And the conversations we've had have been as productive and positive as these have been. But the conversations have been with a very, very small group that, to everyone's point, we knew would be affected by a change in rank status because this is the first year it's happened. And so it was fresh for them. But
when poised with a proposal such as this, what perhaps would be their response? Because we've only heard from one student, and it's been favorable, so I'm wondering if within your conversation, something like that, it's not the class rank, but something else.
Could we put out a survey to our kids, like our whole?
Well, let's talk about this though. This really is only affecting, 3 kids,
Yeah.
right? So of course those
A
3
year,
kids are
per
going to
year.
be supportive of that.
Well, but that's their thing though, too,
I
right? And so
understand
if you're on the other end,
But I think-
I'm not even in that range, and
I understand that, but you're the exception. You're very passionate about being involved in things that are
There's a
going on in
lot
school.
like me that would see that these 4 or 5, maybe 3 kids deserve that sort of recognition.
When we first had this conversation though, because I really want to go back to it, this was even on our radar as a high school. And we had our district goals, and one of them was supporting the whole child. And for us, and we've had many conversations, when you first brought this up, I know you were generally concerned about the competition piece because we lived it with you in terms of how that affected your family, and it was awful.
It was the surrounding
It was.
people, not the 2 kids involved, everyone around them.
Well,
Trust me, it was.
yeah, well, we've had other situations besides yours where we've played this movie before. I have
Right.
rarely
Different
seen.
same.
Exactly, I've rarely seen a scenario where everybody high fives each other, hey, you're valedictorian, hey, I love you. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And we talked a lot about that social emotional piece, and I hear what you're saying, whether it's sports, whether it's music, we're always pushing for that to be the best, and you should. But I think we have to, as the adults, to sit back and say, when is enough enough? What's a healthy balance? I would say that a lot of our top students are going on and doing great things, and they're doing it intrinsically. It's not because they're, our top students are not doing this because they want that number. It's because they've had great parenting, they've had great support, they've had intrinsic, value of education. There's so many factors. And I think we're all at the point where we'll do whatever you all wish that we do, but all I ask is that whatever that number is, whatever that designation is that it's got a little teeth to it. So let me just tell you, I did some research. I contacted some area principals to kind of see what they're doing. So at Long Meadow High School, the only recognition they have is the National Honor Society. They do not do class rank, they do not have valedictorian, salutatorian, nothing. At Ludlow High School, they do the National Honor Society, but they award the student who got 3.0 all 4 years of high school. That's their second tier. Minnechaug actually does what we used to do, almost identical to where they have the National Honor Society, and they also have the class rank piece, but they're having discussions very similar to ours. Is that healthy for students? So I just want to give you perspective that I think a lot of high schools are struggling with this, but the core thing that we all have in common is what's best for students. So, we respectfully understand your position. I feel like we've been made to look like the bad guys, quite frankly, and we're just trying to do what's best for our kids. So, I don't feel, if you guys want to vote on this tonight.
And we're working through it together.
Yeah,
Don't feel like we're the bad guys.
exactly.
We're
Well,
always
but
on
the
the same
kids
team.
come to us and say, why did you get rid of rank? And we're We
Well,
have to
but I
explain
think,
that to them.
I think we came to that consensus together. And to
Yeah.
your point, other districts have done it, and it probably was the right thing to do. Are we
Right.
not in agreement to that? Should we go back to class rank? Is that what you're saying? or
No, I'm not
Okay.
saying that at all. I'm saying I'm letting you guys make that decision at this point, because I feel like
Well, you would propose going back to class rank.
I would
My
not want to go
question.
back to
Okay.
class rank personally. That's my.
So we made the right move to do that, then we should.
We all agree with that,
Yeah, just,
absolutely.
yeah, sorry, Doc. The only thing that I would like to share in closing, because this is obviously an issue that is hit close to home for me and all of my colleagues because of how much we care about our kids, not just at the top, but all the way through, is I don't want to lose sight of what all of our kids are shooting for as they navigate their journey through East Long Meadow High School. And regardless of National Honor Society or a designation of the top 3 or 4 or 2 kids, or whatever that looks like from one year to the next, our kids are working through a journey at East Long Meadow High School that for all of them ends with the same thing, and that's a diploma with our letterhead on it and their name and the completion of their journey. And as much time as we've spent discussing these kids that have had remarkable journeys, many of whom have faced a lot of adversity as well and overcome that, we are tasked every day with working with the other 206 that come from all different places and all different backgrounds, and they might not be athletes. Their name will never be in the paper for athletics. They're not musicians. Their name will never be in the paper there. But they work 40 or 50 hours a week to support their single parents. They take a full course load. They work their rear ends off to get through every day just to make it to school. And there'll be very few meetings where they're ever discussed. There'll be very few meetings when any provisions are ever discussed to recognize their journey. And I would argue that despite the fact that they might not always be on the honor roll and might not be in the Athletic Hall of Fame, or might not be in the National Honor Society, these kids have overcome more and worked through more than many of our kids ever have.
And that's
So-
what awards night's for, though.
And so, well, they'll never get
Find
awards.
something, but
They'll-
you know,
they'll-
there
they'll
could be
never
all
get
kinds of
awards.
awards at that night.
No, they won't. They'll never get any. Not the kids I'm talking about. Because they can't. And the reason that they can't is because their life outside of the walls of this school is consumed with all the other things that they need to do just to navigate another day, period. And so for those kids that we talk a lot about the top 10% and the bottom 10%, but we have a huge percentage of kids in the middle that get up every day and they do the right thing, and you'll never read about them in the paper for any sport, club, activity, or musical event. And they have navigated this journey unbelievably. And my only fear in creating these types of designations is, what's next? And what is enough? To me, there are schools that rank and there are schools that don't. And maybe I need some more schooling on a different train of thought, which I'm happy to engage in. I want to keep learning every day. But we work with 900 every day. And I could categorize kids based on their journeys and my relationships with them over the last 4 years, and I could show you sashes covered with lots of things that would be pretty amazing that they've earned here at East Long Meadow High School. Every kid could have a sash that we designed with something that was pretty amazing, or an asterisk in the program that was pretty amazing. So for me, my concern is where does it end? Where does it stop? And that is not at all a knock on Jake and his peers, and I don't have to explain that to Jake because we know how we feel about one another. But I just don't know when that stops. So I felt like I owed that to myself, my colleagues, and you all to hear that. These are our kids. These are our students. And we are missing a huge population of kids by focusing our efforts, in my opinion, in a discussion where rank has been eliminated on 3 or 4 students. We are missing a whole lot of kids that I'd like to spend a whole lot more time on.
John, I'm aware that we are, Mr. Martin. I'm aware.
You can call me John, it's
But
quite all right.
it's our first and foremost, we're supposed to be educators first, and then we have to take care of all these other problems as they come along. And certainly, there is no reason why at awards night, there can't be honors out there that have nothing to do with academics, that have nothing to do with sports, that are things that the people in our community could come together. And you've got that kid that you know for whatever reasons you don't even want to get into, you could say, this kid's getting it this year. We can do things like that. We absolutely can. There's no reason why. A couple years a student graduated and I was in tears. And when I first met this student, he was in kindergarten and I couldn't help him because I was a substitute at the time, and I was expecting, and he was a hitter, and I was like, wow. And I saw what the school system and his family did to help him, and I saw that boy graduate, and I cried more for him than I did for my own, okay? Because I knew what that kid went through. So don't think for 1 second I'm not aware of that.
I don't think that at all.
I know you don't, but
I don't think that at all.
but I still feel that I feel it's important.
Okay. Ms. Madison Boucher, would you like to make a motion, please?
I will try. I move to implement, beginning with the ELHS class of 2019, a new honor for graduating students, for lack of a better name. The honor will be called the Spartan Scholar. Any student who attains a GPA of 4.7 or higher will be designated and honored as a Spartan Scholar at graduation, and such designation will be added to the student's official transcript if possible. In addition, the Spartan Scholar designation will be added to the ELHS 2018 school profile with it defined, as well as future profiles. That way it'll be on, so for the next profile coming up, because we think we're working on 2017 now, so.
What is the graduation designation that you're looking for, Beth?
Just to be called a Spartan Scholar.
So like designated by like a notation
Like
in the
notation in the
brochure?
program, maybe
Like an asterisk or
an
whatever
asterisk,
they-
maybe, I know they get the gold sash, maybe a separate cord or something,
Well, that might be, I mean, yeah, okay.
Okay, so the motion's
That's
been made, do I
okay.
have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, so, any further discussion?
I think this is worthwhile discussion, and I definitely see value in the conversation, and I appreciate the input from everybody, and I think, for me, for this specific instance, because I see both sides, I'm going to rely on our staff in their recommendations. So I thank you for your openness and your dialogue in this, and I see the value in this, and Jake, I feel your passion on it too, and so I can see both sides, but.
Any other discussion, please? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
No.
Motion is denied 2-3.
That's too bad. As I would not have voted for class rank if I didn't think for 1 minute that that wasn't gonna, our discussion from the other day, last year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Same team, we're all on the same team.
No, I know.
Emotional.
It is.
Are we gonna discuss?
But it's good discussion.
It is, it's always good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Designated individuals.
No, you want to do it, that was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Of course, it's way down.
Okay.
That's all it is.
Each course is weighted.
Yeah, sure, but the designation, so that they know that's way. Okay, moving to item 6.1, draft a statement of interest for East Long Meadow High School. Mr. Smith.
Okay, in your package, you received a downloaded version of the current, or most current draft of the statement of interest. There's been some changes in putting this together this year. We've not only had the help of Mr. Crucial, who's here. Thank you for coming out, and sitting through first couple hours of the meeting. And also, we've reconnected with Sims, Maney, and McKee, the architects that helped us put together a facility study back in 2013 and 2014. So we've tried to come at many of the sections with more of the great things that are happening in East Long Meadow High School, and then showing how the building is somehow constraining us from taking it even to another level. With that said, I do have to say that the formatting you're seeing here in the PDF when it's printed out is different when you look at it on the portal that MSBA will get electronically.
Does
Just
it not do all the repetitiveness, like the window 1, window 2, or is that?
No, I will show that, but just to give you an
Nothing we can do about
example, if
that,
you
right?
look at page 5, just quickly where it says the plan is entitled. So when you look at that, there's spacing there, and then you have your 3 goals. Then where it says, among them are the following, those are bullets that actually space it out so that it's much more, let's say, reader-friendly.
Yeah.
Emphasizing the points. Why the PDF crunches everything together, I'm not sure. So that's something that I may have to look at before I submit.
Gordon, while you're on page 5, in that big paragraph, 2/3 of the way down, far right, see the 50+%?
Yes.
Right underneath that, education areas are under, it says ARC, A-R-C, minor,
Okay.
but
Yep.
cut that.
Thank you.
And I noticed on page, what's it, 21, I think?
Guess we're going into revision.
Sorry, I didn't, you were there, that's why I threw it.
I'll go real quick, page 21, just notice the print, there's something, it seems to be, it looks like the spaces there, you see what I mean, like the...
Yeah, and so that's another piece. So if you look at that on the portal, the spacing's not there. Because I noticed that the first time through, but I will double check that.
But, you know, three comments I made when reading this is, first is they asked for the same information in different ways. It felt like I was reading the same thing over and over.
It is very
again.
repetitive, yes it is.
Secondly, I noticed our enrollment is going up the next 10 years.
So that's projection, sorry, I didn't get to that point. We did also reconnect with NESDEC, the group that originally did our enrollment projection back in actually I think it was 2013. And they have now given us one from basically 2018 through 2028. According to their projections, you're right, our enrollment will be growing slightly over the next few years.
You know, what's interesting was I noticed that the number of births is much less than the enrollment in kindergarten. It's hard to predict some of the kindergarten teachers. Yeah, did you see that?
Oh, yeah.
And did we have 23 kids homeschooled throughout the system?
We did.
Wow.
I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, I didn't either.
That number took me back a little bit.
Yep.
And I think, and the last thing I'll say.
Some cases on homeschooling, families may homeschool for a certain number of grades.
Yeah, I understand that. No, I understand.
Enter the district at another.
The other thing that hit me, and I knew this, and we've heard it, but to see it in writing, if critical failure were to occur electrically, the school would be shut down for approximately 2 to 4 weeks. Wow.
Yeah.
To see that in print kind of just.
So with the electrical system, with the transformer running at a higher temperature than really it was originally designed for, the worry from the electrical inspector and now also our superintendent for the Department of Public Works is that you have an equipment that was originally designed in the 1960s, even though we've changed out panels and so forth. So it's getting those parts.
Yeah.
If this system were to go down, it's the time frame would be getting those parts.
And you need a motion on this, Mr. Smith?
A motion, well, any other revisions before you make a motion that you saw?
It's a draft, it's not, we'll see if we
No,
could.
it's just final submittal.
Yeah,
It's just
eventually I
final?
have to, so if the motion could be open, because I think I
Okay.
will still
Subject
get
to,
possible recommendations.
Go ahead.
Mr. Crucial may have some recommendations. I
architects.
did send it out to the architects just to get their thoughts. So if the
Well,
motion could,
when is it due?
it has to, the hard copy has to be there by April 12th.
Plus he has to get a couple signatures, so I'd rather have a motion.
Do we
to
meet
approve.
again before that? Well,
Yeah,
so
we
here's
do.
the thing though, if we're gonna make major change, or substantial changes.
I don't know that you're gonna make substantial changes,
Right.
but there may
Very
be some
minor.
wording changes.
I would like to have some input on any changes that are made, I guess is my point. I don't wanna.
Sure.
Not that I don't trust anybody, but I think the whole point is that we know what the final draft is.
When's our next meeting, April?
April 8th, that's tight. Because you get 2 signatures.
Yeah. What's, town council, is that the other signature?
Yeah, you have to do that electronically.
Can you please send us the proposed changes, and if we feel like we have some issues with it, then can we call a meeting? I guess
Yeah,
we'd have to.
sure.
Well, we'd have to call a separate meeting.
But we can approve it
Pending any.
pending those.
Well, I
things.
can, all right, let me take a stab at this. Move to approve the draft of the statement of interest for ELHS pending further revision.
So does
That will be-
does
that
that
will-
allow for further revisions,
Pen-
or?
Yeah, pending, allowing for further
Including-
revisions
Let's put a date on it though, so we're not just waiting and waiting and waiting.
by April,
A week from today, April
April
1st?
1st, April 1st.
So there's no revisions by April 1st, we send it.
Because the other issue is if there are, to Greg's point, a substantial amount of revisions, we're gonna have to figure out how to meet.
We'll have to, we gotta
And we'll have to meet during that week,
During that week this week, so yeah, okay.
so April 1st.
Okay, so
Okay.
what you say
So you
again?
want to say pending
got it.
substantial?
All right, I'll move to approve the draft statement of interest for ELHS
Pending no substantial.
pending
No.
no
Thank
you.
substantial
That's better.
revisions
Do that.
due by April 1st.
Due by April 1st. I have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? Okay, unanimously. And last but not least, the grade 6 VEX Robotics World Championship, Louisville, Kentucky. Do I have a motion?
Move that we approve the 6th grade VEX Robotics World Championships to Louisville, Kentucky, April 28th through the 30th, 2019.
I have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
We have all the details of
Yeah.
what's over
Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah.
Good.
And I'm assuming that that's all good with MCAS?
There's number 3.
Yes, they,
Just leaving him.
he's changing his schedule so that they can make sure that they don't miss MCAS.
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, this would be a good reason to miss MCAS.
yeah, it would be.
Any further
That's off the
discussion?
record.
All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? None? Thank you. Once again, want to thank Mr. Don Mackey from LCAT, and of course, Mr. Joe Brady, our student rep. We have one more meeting with Mr. Brady? Something like
No,
that?
I think we have a few, right?
Do we?
We go
Yeah,
into
we've
the
got a
first
few
meeting
more.
of May, correct, Jim?
Okay, good. I
If
thank
I
you all.
call some snow days, maybe in another
It
meeting.
won't matter.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Really?